Okay. So what happens after the evaluation is, and how the results of the evaluation change? Can you read it out loud to me? I'm having a trouble like reading. Yeah, thank you.
So it says, what happens after the evaluation is finished?
Okay.
How will the results of the evaluation change my child's life? What, if any, negative impacts can evaluating my child lead to?
Okay. So I guess it will depend if you do it private or public. I mean, in the public school, let's say from the private standpoint, I wouldn't think about any negative impact on evaluating your child because it's something that it's a private evaluation. So that means that you don't necessarily have to share it with anybody else. So you can keep the results and you can actually want to share the results to whoever you want to do it with. Now, what happens after the evaluation, and that's something that I said maybe like at the beginning, the evaluation is just the start of the process of helping your child become a better learner, be happier about his life or her life. So what typically happens? Once you have the evaluation and you discuss, with the evaluator all the results, if there is one or more diagnoses, you discuss what that diagnosis actually means and what are the specific characteristics of your child within that diagnosis. The recommendations are, I would say, the most important part, or the feedback meeting, I would say, is as important as anything else, because you will kind of make a plan with the psychologist together in terms of what are the next steps. So I would say...
And it can involve two different... I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go, yeah.
It can involve two layers. It can involve a plan at home and a plan in school, right?
Oh, definitely.
Because sometimes the impact can be different in home than it is in school. Sometimes the impact can be the same. Sometimes it's necessary to implement certain methodology in the home that's different than the school. And sometimes it's essential for the language and the methodology to be identical across the board and across the day.
No, of course. And then if you read, already, like private psychoeducation assessments, typically you have, I don't know, I'm just exaggerating, but 100 recommendations, right? Which I do the evaluations and I write the reports, but I know that maybe all the recommendations are important, but you need, at least in my opinion, there are different steps or different phases in terms of, what to do. You kind of really go out there and start, I don't know, going to the speech therapist, having speech therapist, having OT, going to the to remediation for reading. I don't know, how coaching sessions for behavior. I don't know, like sometimes the recommendations are kind of overwhelming. So I definitely believe that the evaluator should sit down, that's why, like with the parents, and discuss what are the next steps. Okay, I believe that after this meeting, the next step will be do A, X, or Y, and then start the second phase and going to other professionals or do another referral, or actually kind of think about the life of the child and what is going to happen next in terms of the results and in terms of how you want to help that child. Now, so for example, definitely I would suggest that the first thing to do is to share those results with the school to see how the school can actually help that child within the school setting. At the same time, there's always something from the parent that they can do at home in terms of typically the relationship that they have with the child can help the parent understand why the child is doing X or Y. So maybe you're going to have more patience because you understand what's going on with your child. Thinking about how you're going to help your child do homework or not do homework, how you're going to approach your child in organizing, setting up routines, in prioritizing work, in actually thinking about extracurricular activities or not. Am I having my child do too many extra things after school so he doesn't have any time to do work, or am I just I don't know, my child is having so much trouble in school, so I'm having a tutor and I'm having so many therapies, all the time, that my child doesn't have time to play or to play an instrument or to play some sports. So those are the conversations that I think that the psychologist should have after the results, in order to see what are the next steps, and what are the changes that the family and the school and the child is going to take in order to help that child thrive in life.
Right. And I think another important aspect of this, not every person with the same title is the right person to evaluate your child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we could put 50 people that are a clinical psychologist or a neuropsychologist. They have to have a specialty, and some students' needs are very complex.
Mm-hmm.
And some individuals will even tell you, because one of my closest friends is a clinical psychologist, and her reports are incredible. They're thorough. But and she does understand even disorders and disabilities that are outside of what she feels comfortable evaluating. But her ethics are so high that she'll tell you, I don't feel comfortable evaluating bipolar disorder, where there's a suspicion of bipolar disorder, for example, because that's not really my specialty.
Correct.
And I don't want to make a mistake by maybe diagnosing, maybe I'm just not as experienced with that. And so she'll refer out.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes your first few calls, it might involve referring out. I have a client right now. She is deaf and hard of hearing, language impaired. And she also has a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, and she also has PTSD. This is an evaluation from a multidisciplinary team of the highest level of qualified people, because anything less than that is not going to do this particular child justice.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, I want to add one thing. So the negative impacts.
Yeah.
I have a lot of parents that are worried about certain kinds of diagnosis, even where they have suspicion of certain kinds of diagnosis, such as bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder, or of course, intellectual disability, right? And what I tell them is, this report is protected under, with the school district, a body of law called FERPA. Those are the educational records. They cannot be released without your permission as the parent. Now, once your child's 18, that becomes their educational records, and they can certainly release it to anybody that they want. And they have the independence and the authority over their life to do so. But also HIPAA, and you can talk more about that. But yes, if your child is accused of a certain crime and that information is subpoenaed, there are certain exceptions to that in court hearings. Certainly that's a scenario. Is that a common scenario to be concerned about and wanting to get valid information to change the life of your child? Not in 99.9% of the situations, but if you're trying to become a police officer, or if you're joining the military and you have a certain level of mental health disorder, there are certain things that you are mandated to report.
Correct. And besides like the legal aspect, definitely at the end of the day, I think that it is better to know what's going on with your child than just trying, to put layers, and just because you're afraid of, what might happen.
Right. And we've become so progressive. I have a lot of parents with the intellectual disability part that have a lot of concerns and worries about that. Boston University accepts students that graduated on the access.
Yeah.
Major universities that your average college educated person has not had the opportunity to attend accept students on access points. So, some fears are founded and others are unfounded, and there is a lot of progress that we have made. We still have a lot of leaps and bounds to make, but I hope by the time your child graduates that, we're going to be waves and waves ahead.
Correct. And I've seen, as a clinician, I don't really care about the number of the IQ. There are so many other factors that are much more important, such as resilience, having a growth mindset, and working hard, and having a clear goal. That is going to that's exactly what is going to take you, in life. It doesn't really matter the number of IQ eventually. So definitely, I totally agree with you. And nowadays, the world is changing, and the opportunities are going to be so much different, I believe, than that the settings of what the organizations are asking or they're providing now. So.
But equally, a fear is that parents don't want their child to be put into a box or misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes these evaluations lead to a child being misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget Lily Williams that I advocated for in Volusia County, who was deemed to have an IQ of 54 and was relegated to self-contained IND classroom. She was never evaluated using her AAC device simply because nobody had the skills to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We came to find out that she had an average IQ.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of these evaluations can have some of them can have negative impacts, but guess what? You don't want to let that not have you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get it and you disagree with it, you get to disagree with it. You get to tell them real quick about what they can do if they disagree with the private eval. Actually, did we go through that slide already, or is that?
No, we're gonna.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Let's move on.